You use the definition that is going
stop. Don't give me the Vosh argument.
and it's still used.
It's based on
context.
originally it's from French, le retard or something, right?
Not if I'm in a fucking medical class and we're talking about literal retards.
No,
Like,
the medical staff don't use the word retard anymore.
Somebody in the medical field probably uses the word mentally retarded often.
I think you're completely wrong.
That's
and this is
completely wrong.
Based on what?
You know, look at this spastic, look at this retard. It's like, chill out. It's not what we don't use these words anymore, man.
So are you nursing a huge Nazi fan base, Chud? Is that what?
Well,
what is up with this Roman salute you're doing here?
I mean, I have a couple of white nationalists in my audience, but they don't last long because we sometimes disagree. There's a guy called Sunwater who watched my stuff, but when I said that white doesn't necessarily equal European, he got really angry with me and left. So,
okay.
Yeah.
We've said that. We've argued many times about, the white identitarian stuff. So we're kind of hated among that group too. We've gone
Well, isn't Sitch Jewish as well?
Yeah, Sitch is Jewish. Yeah, we've gone round and round with the neo-reactionaries.
That can't help. I mean, I'm not saying that because I'm anti-Semitic. I'm saying that because they're anti-Semitic, just to be clear. Okay?
Chud's like, if you want to build a strong white nationalist audience, it helps if you're not actually Jewish.
Wait. I left for 5 seconds.
That makes it
talking about Jews. What's happening?
That makes it nearly impossible.
Oh, no.
We're just being
your people?
We were talking about the Chud chasing off his white nationalist audience. And I was saying that we've done battle with the monarchist and the neo-reactionaries and stuff like that. So obviously
you're just libs, right? That's you're just kind of centrist, middle of the road, boring libs.
Yeah.
No, you can go check out Little Joel's channel. They're conservatives.
I do think resisting arrest should be a capital offense. So, I mean, I don't know that that's middle of the road, but
that's pretty wild. Okay, well.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was about to be smart and you interrupted me with your meme, Doom Media. I was about to say some smart shit.
Totally. Yeah, let's go back to that. We were talking about politics for a second here.
Unbelievable. For example,
who was the raper in the Destiny stuff? Because that's what Max's article was about, right? It was of all, it was as long as like War and Peace. I saw you reviewing it, and I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." And I watched maybe like 15 minutes of it and then moved on to something else. And then I came back like 10 hours later and it's still going. Like you're still streaming. So you did multiple streams on that, right?
I did, yeah, because I started reading it and I thought, and then people started paying me a bunch of money. I was like, fuck, I might as well continue if I'm going to keep making money. And then ended up making like $6,000 or $7,000 off of it. I think because it's such a mammoth feat. It's like, it's almost like climbing Mount Everest in some ways, some might argue. But harder, intellectually at least, harder if anything.
It was your Vietnam.
But yeah, I mean, it was obviously a very lengthy article. I think that there's this post hoc rationalization I've seen of, that was what it was always going to be. It was always going to be just listing some of the bad things that Destiny's done to try and paint a pattern of behavior. Obviously, I used to be friends with Max, so I do have somewhat of an inside track into some of the dynamics at play. And my understanding was that it was going to be more of a Harvey Weinstein style expose. And that was how it was very heavily worded at the start. But it turned out not really being a Harvey Weinstein expose. It was just, here's some bad, condemnable things that Destiny's done, some of them over a decade ago. Here's how he treated Lav, which obviously I do not really agree. I think Lav is Lav at the end of the day. The Anna stuff, which I've said the Anna sexting thing was obviously a retarded thing. I can't believe that happened. But the thing is, there's little pieces in there that I would be critical of, and I'd say, I think this is dumb, I think this is wrong. But broadly, as an overall article, when it was supposed to be a Harvey Weinstein expose, didn't really seem to meet what that was, right? So it's like massively underwhelming compared to what I was expecting it to be. But then I'd been following it, so I knew that what it was supposed to be had sort of backslid away from that expose to being what it ended up being.
That's the most charitable review of the article I've heard so far.
Well, I mean, the thing is
you would call it a schizoid manifesto.
Ever
full
since
of lies and deceit.
Okay. Ever since
Doomer, can you put the old background up? Can you put Chud's old background up?
Sure.
Just because I have like the perfect. I've got Chud Logic commentary streamer and Chud Logic media commentary.
Okay, based.
It's like It's perfect.
I mean, I think, I don't want to suck my own dick. Okay. But what I will say is I feel like I have been quite uniquely placed to cover this because I obviously used to be friends with Max, and as revealed in some of the article, me and him have had personal and private conversations about some of this stuff. But obviously what was left out of the article, because it looks shit and stupid for Max, is that I warned him numerous times and told him, be careful if you're covering drama. I'll speak to you about what I think happened off, between you and me, so I can give you my take on it. So I've had a bit of an inside insight into the way it's gone. And it's funny seeing in the article, like him talking about the Vosh stuff. That is more or less exactly what he said to me privately months ago, which my response was, that isn't really what happened. You're not giving an accurate reflection of the drama as it happened. So yeah.
Now you don't want to suck your own dick, or you can't suck your own dick.
I mean, can anyone suck their own dick?
No, I get what you're saying about the and this is what I was talking about how people think, because a lot of times our biases are what get in the way of us being able to accurately perceive reality. So you're telling Max, MrGirl, that you've got a different take on the actual situation, the facts on the ground, but he's not able to believe you for some reason.
Right.
Like he doesn't necessarily think, he thinks your view of the picture is completely incorrect.
Yes.
Well, he's just delusional.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what you're trying to avoid right there.
Well, let me give you an example. So Chud just watched the Kidology conversation, right? So Chud just watched the Kidology conversation. Max said in that everybody that he thinks highly of agreed with the report. And then like 5 minutes later, he says that he thought highly of Kidology, but she's sitting there criticizing the report. So he's like, I don't think highly of you anymore.
No
I mean, it's just
way.
like a self-verifying.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a self-verifying thing. If you disagree with him, he just won't respect your opinion anymore. So
I've seen that. Yeah. I guess I feel like we're being hypercritical of Max, and Chud is a little uncomfortable with that, which
Well, okay. I guess the level, it's not, I don't, you can call Max whatever you like. Okay. I know you've got a history with calling Max certain things. I watched your discussion with him. We don't need to get into that now. Okay. I think I was quite critical of you at the time, and I probably still would be, but we don't need to get into that.
Nice.
Okay. Listen, all I want to say is this, right? This is the problem with Max, and this is where I feel I've got a bit more of a different insight. Max feels a certain way about something, and he wants you to understand that's how he feels about it, right? Now, this gets into what you're talking about, because to me, I don't care how someone feels about something. I care what is true, what you can prove, and what the narrative as it happened.
based.
That to me is more important than how you feel. And this is why I keep saying, MrGirl has become like a leftoid to me. Now, you could apply this criticism to the right too, but my experience, this is what I think of, is like the leftoid conception of like, well, I feel a certain way about it. There's a truth to that. It's like standpoint epistemology shit, right? And, like from my perspective and my experience, this is what I think about it. That makes it true in some way, whatever it is. I don't really care about that, right? It's like, what's true? That's what matters. And I feel that is a real failing of the report and of Max in general talking about this. He's more concerned about how he feels about it rather than what the truth is, in my perspective.
Yeah, he almost, I mean, he's almost proud of that. I constantly hear him say, these are my feelings. I like to wear my feelings on my sleeve. This is what people are here for. They're here for my feelings. And I'm like, I mean, to some extent, we want to understand who you are as a human being. But when you start becoming unmoored from reality, I tend to think, as a streamer, as a commentary person, you kind of lose respectability with a wider community and ultimately with your audience. Like people are here to hear takes that have some semblance of the real world, or they just want to be spoon fed, whatever their ideology is, right? Like what thing can I confirm for you today? What bias can I make you believe is the way the real world is? That happens a lot too, but we aren't in that path.
What's funny? I was going to say, what's funny about the article is that hasn't even Destiny's haters haven't come out and given weight to the article. Now,
really?
No, there's not a single person that hates Destiny I've seen come forward to go, yeah, look at this article. This guy's really bad. And these are people that have consistently shit on Destiny repeatedly.
Well, Carissa Avalon is the only one.
Yeah. Oh, what Hunter? Oh, sorry. I mean Hunter Avalon's wife. Sorry, I feel
Yeah.
bad saying that. That's what I'm saying. But yeah,
How dare
sure.
you use her real name?
There was some woman Destiny was talking to last night that was like, she seemed to believe that everything Destiny did was wrong.
Wait,
And it was like
Brittany
this,
Simon?
no, I don't know who it was. It was like this horrible struggle session. It was a struggle to listen
Was
to.
it Katie?
It might have been.
Destiny
She seemed to
will
buy it all.
sometimes has like a sort of a retarded heel that he brings on to. Katie seems to be fitting that role at the moment.
To be retarded, yeah.
Basically, yeah. But the thing is, there's definitely like, obviously, Destiny is not a fucking impeccable person that's completely beyond reproach. There's absolutely things that, you know, he has done that are wrong and you can criticize. But it just feels like rather than just do that, Max has got to paint it as this behavior and put the moral impetus on you to cut contact with him or cut ties with him, which I just don't think is meaningfully proven by the article at all.
Have you talked to Max since you dropped this and you streamed on it?
No, not at all.
Okay. I'm curious, like, if is he going to be upset that basically after all of his work, you've profited the most from it and not him?
He probably won't admit that, but when he asked about it on a stream, he seemed a bit perturbed by it. Let's
I
put it
bet.
that way.
Why didn't he do a video? Why didn't he like read it himself?
Because he wants the words to exist on the page so you read them in your own head, in your own voice, to see how bad they are.
I heard that, and that seemed like a little I fucked up cope after the fact narrative. Like maybe he didn't really think it through and then just was like, oh yeah, this sounds accurate.
Okay, I personally think he is reading the words and he's got all his own biases, so he feels a certain way about it, and he thinks that maybe someone else might see it the way he does. And I think there's some people apparently that agree with him. And maybe people are going to come and cover it. And
I used to run a writer's lab for screenwriters, comedy screenwriters, and you would see this all the time with first-time writers. You know, they would put up pages, and the audience would be completely, you know, unconfused basically by what was going on. So it was obviously bad writing. So then they would try to give the, you know, it's like the audience gives feedback to the writer, and they would, you know, tell what the problems were, the conflict or the stakes or whatever. But the person would often jump into this mode where they would just want to correct you that you were reading it incorrectly. Where, you know, you just, everything is there on the page. You just, it's something happened with you when you read it that you didn't actually absorb the meaning that I had intended. I mean, obviously you got to go back to what you wrote to be able to change that. But I feel like there's a little bit of that going on with the Max situation. He's like, listen, I wrote this big thing and you're just, you need to read it correctly. Like, let me explain to you how you read this thing and get out of it what I'm getting out of it.
Well, he seems to change his position on it. Because on the one hand, he says, well, if you disagree with the article and you think differently about it, that's fine. But then he's saying he's written it so like a journalist will read it and be convinced by it. Well, it's like, to me, that seems to be inconsistent. Like, clearly you want it to be convincing to people. And then he's like, well, I've written it for parents of people that watch Destiny and journalists. But then you think, well, the format's no good for that. Who's going to read 100,000 words?
Can you imagine a boomer getting an email like,
yes,
hey, can you read this? Can you read this Great Gatsby linked manifesto?
Did you know your child is watching the streamer? Here, read this 1,000-page document on this person.
And you can't understand it without like an autistic amount of lore.
Yeah, like, this is like
streamer drama.
The dumbest thing I've ever heard. Oh my god.
I mean, I am Jesus. I am interested in the dynamics of the streaming situation. It is kind of interesting that Destiny has all of this control over what people are calling his orbiters. And it's interesting that Max is like, I'm going to organize a union of the orbiters, like a orbiters union where we all have specific rights about how people address us online in the Destiny subreddit, which I also think is just a complete misunderstanding of how internet culture works. Like, Destiny doesn't have control like a military commander over his audience. A lot of times, if he tried to exercise that control, I think they would probably rebel faster than any kind of, like, they're not trained in the way a military unit is trained. So, but Max seems to have this impression that Destiny could do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is some truth to maybe if someone is going on his stream regularly and wants to, have favor with Destiny, they might have certain takes and certain perspectives. Like there's probably something in that. But I think Max applies it way too broadly and applies it to everyone, including people like Abba from Abba and Preach. Abba got a bigger YouTube channel than Destiny, and they seem to just be more so friends. And they even disagree sometimes on stuff.
Yeah.
Like on Max.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing as well, there are definitely people in Destiny's community who are very sycophantic and will parrot whatever the line is from Destiny, and it's frustrating to deal with, and you got to kind of ignore it as best you can or tell them to fuck off and get a grip. But there's a lot of people in his audience that are happy to hear criticisms and are happy to engage with people who are being more critical of Destiny. So
Abba gave Max excellent advice, and it totally fell on deaf ears. Max did not take that advice at all. When he told him, if you were you should be interested in being nicer and wanting to influence people and growing a bigger audience. And Max was just not taking that to heart at all, which, I mean, at some level you have to win the audience over before you can persuade them. And Max kind of has this attitude that is just like,
he doesn't take advice. I mean, like I talked to him. My main piece of advice to him was that like credibility is important. Like the credibility of your witnesses and the credibility of you are crucial to people listening to you. And he was just like, no. And then he starts his article. Oh yeah, I'm the guy who
destroying his credibility.
Hot. Like, like you're dead in the water. It doesn't matter what evidence you have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he doesn't listen.
Well, that's my chief critique of Max is that the things that Max wants to be persuasive on, he has zero credibility to be persuasive on. So I'm just like, yeah, same as you're saying, Doomer. He's dead in the water. You got to realize that that's the reality on the battlefield. And, you say, okay, well, I can have credibility somewhere else. Like, I do think he could build some credibility as an artist. People seem to really like him as an artist, but some sort of credibility as like this activist, it's like, nah, like there's too much dirt on you, man. You got to take that into consideration.
I mean, he should have handed it off if he thought he had something to a journalist or something. There's plenty of industry people, streamer, esports people that talk about this stuff. They publish articles about Rich Campbell of OTK is accused of sexual misconduct, sexual assault, whatever. But it just seems like, I mean, I hate to use the psych terms, but it seems like incredibly narcissistic of like, I've got to control this. I've got to release the article. I've got to do it all. But then, even in like Harvey Weinstein's case, because I think he atted the Harvey Weinstein journalist on Twitter, which was
no
funny.
way.
This was right at the start. Yeah, he atted them. Like,
try and get
he did. But surely, like, if someone that was abused by Harvey Weinstein isn't going to come out and write an article themselves about it, a journalist is going to investigate and look into it and do journalistic due diligence, which I think Max broke on many various occasions.
Well, and I think part of the problem with the credibility issue, didn't this all start because Max was mad at Destiny for talking to Nick Fuentes?
Yes, that is the kind of root of all of this.
Yeah, because it's not like, to me that makes the whole thing seem so spite driven. It's not like, oh, he discovered some fact about Destiny and it changed his perspective. It's like, oh, we just disagree on something, so I'm going to like try to destroy your career.
Yeah, I think that Max was concerned with the way that the subreddit was being managed, which is quite the sentence when you think about it. I mean, who fucking cares about a subreddit at the end of the day?
That's right. He got banned from his Reddit. That's probably what pissed him off, right?
Yeah, that definitely had an impact. But, I think there is a truthfulness to his feelings about it. Like, I think he feels the way he feels about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the bias comes from feeling negatively about it rather than being like, I'm going to destroy Destiny. It's like he feels righteously justified because Destiny is doing wrong.
Yeah, but it's more like, because he had this whole fear that Destiny was going to turn people into all writers or something by being friendly to Nick, which it's actually like a tragic, hilariously dark comedy, because he basically destroys his relationship with Destiny over this Nick Fuentes drama, and then immediately afterwards Nick Fuentes teams up with Ye and destroys his own credibility. So it's like, well, Max's concern didn't even need to happen.
Yeah, I mean, because as in the article, I myself had concerns about some of the interactions Destiny was having with Nick. It just seemed a bit inadvisable to go for like chicken and waffles with the guy. But then when you get down to the meat and potatoes of what's the actual factual issue, I never thought that Nick was going to bring about the Fourth Reich by talking to Destiny. And I joked about a bit about this on stream, but in some ways I feel somewhat responsible for the Ye stuff because I was somewhat of an instigator for the conversation about Nick Fuentes, which led to Max getting banned, which led to Destiny cutting ties with Nick, and then Nick eventually linked up with Milo and linked up with Ye. That probably would have happened regardless, but it's kind of funny to think that I could have influenced the full potential Fourth Reich. And
I'm sure Nick was like super thirsty when Milo called him to hook up with Ye. I think he would have done that regardless. People, they challenge the chicken and waffles thing, which I watched that conversation. I didn't have a problem with it. I don't think it specifically humanizes Nick in any special way. I mean, there's literally a part where like a guy walks by and Nick's like, "Are you Jewish or something?" And the guy was like, "Oh, I used to be a fan of yours, but now I'm kind of not." And Destiny like de-radicalized me. And like, to me, the only thing I think Destiny did wrong in those conversations was, he would afterwards, and I don't know if this is just because he honestly believed it or he was just kind of trying to keep facilitating these conversations with Nick, which were interesting, was he would kind of be like, well, is Nick really still a white nationalist? I don't know. It's hard to tell. Right. And then obviously, the Ye stuff comes out and it's all like, oh, okay, he's exactly the same. Nothing has changed.
Well, I think Destiny's mistake was not showing Fuentes 21 Jump Street. That would have just solved.
That's true. That would have solved everything.
Well, the funny thing about the chicken and waffles thing is I was concerned about it quite a lot and privately to Max. But then when I watched it just before our conversation. There's a whole thing we could get into. We don't need to get into all the ins and outs of the drama there. But like I watched before the conversation, I watched it and I was like, actually, what I watched seemed fine. It didn't seem like to be that big a deal. And it's something that I guess is always the issue is you'll watch clips of something and you'll get a certain emotional state about it. But then when you watch the full context often, and this is something, I still struggle with today because you see something on Twitter, like I saw Nicholas Dorio shared a clip of something and I was like, fuck me, this is crazy. But then I watched the full context. I was like, yeah, this isn't as big a deal as I first thought. So, just another lesson of just watch the content, come to conclusions based on the full context,
Oh yeah, no, it's like so often. Yeah, very on Twitter. They'll prime you. They'll you read their tweet and it puts that idea, they inception that idea in your head, and then you see the clip and you're like, oh my God. And then you go back and you watch the whole thing and you're like, oh, wait a minute, it's not what that person was saying at all. They completely took it out of context. So I never trust or try to put any faith in clips that I can't actually find the full context of, which is why I'm not a big fan of Project Veritas, much to some people's
what do you think of all the white people getting beaten up by the black people then?
I think it's obviously selective bias.
Okay. I mean, obviously I agree, but I was hoping you'd say something racist.
This entire conversation was about the proper definition of the word woke. Like, we were actively in the process of defining this word, and Sitch and Adam are like, well, you can't use it that way. It's actually against the rules to use it that way.
Never said that. Never, ever
That's
said
literally Joel's argument in his first video.
Yes, yeah. That's his argument. That's not our argument. You use the word woke however you want.
No, wait. No, stop. Don't do that. Okay. Words mean things. Okay. And it definitely ruins the discourse when words are overused and everything falls apart. Okay.
We got the word police over here.
This is peak idiocy. Okay. From Joel. His entire first video was criticizing that lady whose name I always forget, and Ben Shapiro's definition of woke, saying your definition is wrong. Totally. And now he's criticizing us because we said someone else's definition is wrong.
Oh, I guess you're right. Yeah,
yes. What?
But this is
insane.
Look, there is like an academic definition of woke that we can talk about. We can have a subsequent conversation about. There is a slur.
I've seen it. It's really long. Woke. You posted it on Twitter, didn't you?
Yeah, that's Helen Pluckrose's definition. I cribbed that from
a woman's. No thanks. Give me a man's definition and we'll talk.
Okay. Well, I mean, I figure, if I represent it as my own and it's a woman's, that's acceptable, right?
Yeah, steal a woman's thoughts and present them as your own, based.
I've credited Helen Pluckrose many times for that definition, but
right.
Yeah, no, you can have a substance conversation about it. And look, Sitch, I think definitions are about utility. You use the definition that is going to
stop. Don't give me the fucking Vosh argument, please, God.
Wait, hang on. Wait, so the thing,
how,
I don't know
what do you think how do you think words, you think words are not designed to have the maximum utility?
I think
it's not about
broadly,
utility, is it? We don't decide, right, this is how we're going to use the word. In common parlance, words get used in certain ways, and that can then change the meaning, and that's reflected when dictionaries
sure,
are
but it's
right?
completely based on utility, though.
But it's not based on utility. No one thinks, I'm going to use the word this way because it's the most utilitarian way of using it, right? You just use the words, and over time, words change. So retard used to mean you're in hospital because you've got fucking Down syndrome, and now it just means a spicy version of stupid, as much as progressives try and deny that.
But retard has an actual academic definition as well that hasn't gone away.
I need a little pocket Chud logic that pops up and makes these arguments.
Okay, you're being retarded now. The word retard has not been used in a scientific fashion for literally decades. Like a long time. A long time.
Yes, but if we wanted to if I wanted to get out the academic literature on the retard versus moron versus idiot, we could have that conversation, and that language would serve the utility of having that conversation. The whole thing about this woke thing, when you and I want to talk about how a climate change article is woke in the context of oppressor versus oppressive, we're doing it because that language serves the utility of that conversation.
Well, wait.
What are you trying to say, Adam? I don't get what you're trying to say. I can't tell whether you're joking or memeing. What are you trying to talk about? Utility? What do you mean? What?
Look, if I want to use the word genius to call Big Joel stupid. Look, what is so
Let's
confusing
use the retard
about
example.
this?
Wait. Go back to retard. Okay.
Okay, go. So use the retard
when
example.
the term, like obviously retarded, it originally meant slow, right?
Yes, and it's still used.
It's based on
context.
originally it's from French, retard or some shit, right?
Retarded.
Probably, right? It probably meant slow or something like that, right?
It meant slow.
Relatively slow in mental, emotional, or physical development.
No. Originally, I think it literally just slow. It was French for slow.
Yeah, it literally just meant slow. Okay, and then when we start talking about doctors start talking about people with mental problems that were having intellectual disabilities, they would say, "Oh, like they're slow, so they're retarded," right? And it wasn't a slur. And then this is what happens with every psychological term used to describe someone who has some kind of mental problem. It becomes a slur, and then the psychologist and psychiatrist have to figure out a new word because whatever the official word is becomes a slur, right?
Chud, Sitch does this all the time, man.
Right.
It's just
well, I'm on Sitch's side. Sitch is on the money.
Okay, that's literally what happened with the term retarded, and that's we had that way. That's why it became intellectual disabilities, and then everyone called each other disabled, and they're always looking for some new term. Okay, and so, but the conversation would be like, imagine in the time period where retarded first started to become an insult, moving away from like the medical literature, and you're saying, well, what does the word retarded mean? Does it mean a slur, or does it mean whatever the medical literature does? And you'd say, well, it could mean either
both.
or. Yeah, it could mean either or depending on the situation. But I'd say I'd say by today's standards, since I don't think anyone uses the word retarded in any sort of any sort of medical field anymore, I don't believe. I think it purely, I think it purely means the slur aspect.
Not if I'm in a fucking medical class and we're talking about literal retards.
No, medical staff don't use the word retard anymore. If you're in a medical class and I was someone with Down syndrome, look at that retard, people would be like, whoa, that's not the word you use. You use Down syndrome now.
Right. No one in a medical class uses the term retarded unless they were to preface it by saying, we used to use the word retarded, right? Or in the original sense of the word. They wouldn't just say retarded because it just means a slur now.
Do not work in a disability center, Adam, because you'll be insulting everyone left, right, and center. Look at this spastic, look at this retard. It's like, chill out. It's not what we don't use these words anymore, man.
We don't say that anymore. We say Trump supporter.
Listen.
Oh, got him.
But this is true for.
I am dead certain that somebody in the medical field probably uses the word mentally retarded often.
I think you're completely wrong.
This is
based
true.
On what? Based on your gut intuition?
No, based on the fact
based
that
on all
when
the literature
sorry,
I'll let you speak, Sitch. You're going to do
based on the
job.
fact that when I was in psych classes, this was literally
based
something
on his psych class back 100 years ago. The one.
Yes, this is literally what
and it's
every
got more progressive since then.
I ever had told me.
A literal anecdote. Okay.
Wait.
Let us continue.
Wait, this isn't an antidote. I read fucking there's literally in textbooks talking about this.
Yes.
This is what I said on stream a million times. Every word for stupid started
Based
off
on
as
a
a medical
literal
term for
anecdote.
someone. This is not an anecdote.
It is.
Every term for someone who's stupid, including stupid, moron, slow-witted, all these terms were not originally insults. The term stupid and moron, all these things were originally used by medical professionals to refer to people that had some sort of intellectual disability. And then it becomes an insult, and they have to find a new fucking term.
Retard was an umbrella term in some cases because they probably didn't know what the fuck was wrong with someone's brain. I mean, you think of people fucking lobotomies and shit. They didn't know what the fuck was going on there. They were like, oh, let's just fucking pour a bit of alcohol in and burn this bit of the brain off. Let's scoop a bit of brain out. So now they use specific
mental
terms.
Retardation is a generalized tracheotic disorder categorized by subdiverged cognitive functioning and deficits in 2 or more adaptive behaviors with onsets before the age of 18. Once focused almost entirely on cognitive, the definition now includes both a component related to mental functioning and related to an individual's functional skills in their environment. Mental retardation in nursing.
Federal Register, 2013, change in terminology, mental retardation to intellectual disability from the Social Security Administration of the U.S. government. This final rule adopts that change. The notice of proposed rulemaking we published in the Federal Register of 2013. We are replacing the term mental retardation with intellectual disability in our listing of impairment that we use to evaluate claims involving mental disorders in adults and children.
Why did they change the language?
Because it became a slur.
Right. To serve the utility.
Stop. Okay. Let's stop. Listen, I don't want to look with you on the utility thing. That's literally not how categories work at all. But I want to bring this
also,
back.
wait a second. I would imagine the intellectual disability thing is just to assess for certain things, like you're talking about Social Security, is to assess whether someone's eligible for Social Security. In terms of medicine, they try and be specific about what that causes the retardation.
Yeah, I'm on the nursing website. Great point, Chud. Great point.
Stop. Retardation was a broad umbrella term to encompass many different disabilities under it. Intellectual disability is just a broad umbrella term, like retard used to be, that encompasses many things under it.
That's you could have Down syndrome or severe autism. You might have been called a retard previously. Now they say you've got an intellectual disability, but you're not going to get called a retard. You're going to get referred to in more specific terminology with an umbrella term.
But they would say you have an
used.
intellectual disability.
Exactly. But then they're going to be more specific in a medical sense. The intellectual disability, I would presume, is more so an umbrella to assess, what benefits you might be entitled to.
Now let me, Now let me bring this to woke, and how this applies to woke.
Well, I mean, I just want to finish up on I have a question for you before we move on. So,
is it retarded?
Well, this is going to get. Well, okay.
No, my question is about if you're making the argument that, definitions are not about utility, what are the definitions for?
It's not that they're not about utility. They don't form in a utilitarian way. People are not, except of course, in very specific medical fields where they literally are, if that's what you mean. Like literally,
that is exactly
people,
what I mean.
Okay. So wait. So yeah, when you're talking about when they wrote the DSM, DSM-4, it was called gender identity disorder.
I know.
And people felt like, oh, they're calling it a disorder. They're calling my identity a disorder. This is offensive. So then when DSM-5 comes out, they rename it to gender dysphoria just to assuage that argument of I don't want to label your identity disorder. I want to label the feeling that you have as the disorder, right?
And that's not a utilitarian argument. What is it?
No. So if you're talking about medical professionals and medical fields, I will agree with you. Yes. But if we're talking about,
that's all I'm saying.
Okay. Well, but me and Chud were talking about the public at large does not adopt definitions in this utilitarian way.
Oh my God.
At all.
How can you look? I'm trying to stay calm here. How can you say that? Because literally the utility of me calling Chud a fucking retard is that I get to insult him. Okay? How is that not a utilitarian argument?
But then retard has not become an insult because people have gone, I want a way to insult people. It's developed slowly over time because people have gone, oh, someone's got Down syndrome. It would be funny to say that person's got Down syndrome or some disability or some intellectual problem, so I'm going to call them a retard.
It's still utility.
Okay, I think you're conflating utility with utilitarianism.
I'm not. Stop with the conflating. I literally mean the utility, the usefulness of a word Look, we can't have
that could be a reason. Okay, that could be a reason that a word changes, but the way it changes isn't because one day someone goes, "Oh, it's of utility to me to use it in this way." It's a slow process that happens over time.
Well, it could be.
Of course.
It could be either in terms of there could be some malevolent like right winger who's like, I'm going to call climate change woke, even though I know it doesn't fit the definition, just because people don't like wokeness and I want to associate them together.
Totally.
That's like someone could have that thought, but I think most people don't. I think most people are just like, oh, they just perceive things the way they perceive them, and they say, oh, I think woke is this, and therefore I'm going to kind of like project it onto a bunch of other stuff, whether it really makes sense or is a coherent definition or not.
I think this is hilarious because this is why Big Joel's videos are so goddamn short, is because he can't have any of this conversation. Like this conversation just totally went over Big Joel's head,
so I think the confusion was, I think both me and Chud thought you meant utilitarian, not
no,
there's utility.
I meant usefulness.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, because that's always Vosh's argument for. That's literally Vosh's argument.
Didn't you start by saying about Vosh as well?
No, I never. You guys brought up Vosh.
I
brought up Vosh.
Yeah, because that's literally his argument for trans women as women. Is he says, categories are utilitarian. We can define these things however the fuck we want.
I don't listen to Vosh. I don't know Vosh's argument on this stuff.
Well, we've literally watched these videos.
Look, I make my own arguments. Okay.
So, but let me bring this back to wokeness.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
Let's polish this off. Joel is going to be very angry. This video is going to be 2 hours long.
I know.
And he's not like the fact we said retard so much either.